the Cerebral Entertainment Podcast.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to yet another riveting edition of the Cerebral Entertainment Podcast. I am James, and right now I'm looking at a screen, and there within lies my good friend, Colt Mercado. How you doing, sir?
Don't lie. You're liking this now, right?
What do you mean?
The Zoom instead of being in studio. I mean, there's definitely a difference. You can definitely tell there's a difference.
Mm-hmm.
I'm liking this Zoom thing. I'm liking being able to pull up stuff to show people and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, so let's talk about that for a second, because I'm glad you brought that up.
Mm-hmm.
I always like to do pros and cons.
Yeah.
So what are your pros and cons for Zoom? Well, let's just do a contrast. Zoom contrasted with being live in the studio together.
I mean, it's a different dynamic, and it's not just like when it's us, it's, interviews and stuff like that too. It's a different dynamic when you're in room with somebody than it is over a screen, which is weird, I guess, right? Because I mean, it's technically like you're still right here.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, I guess as far as pros go, you don't have to leave your house to come here.
Okay.
That's probably
true.
a pro on your side.
Yeah.
Pro is being able to pull up documents and things like that for our guests to see.
Yes.
Cons, like I said, the dynamic of not being, here together with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe sound quality a little bit, just because the Zoom, is an issue a little bit. If you ever have any in and out with the internet, that's a thing. And
right.
Just a matter of just not being together makes the audio quality a little different.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a pretty good contrast.
Yeah.
And I agree with everything you just said. There is something I was actually talking about this. I was thinking about meetings in general, like for work, Zoom versus in person. But I was also talking with someone just the other day. She had asked me about what I thought about virtual counseling versus, in-person counseling.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a certain dynamic that's missing when you're on virtual. Right. And I was talking about a lot of the body movement, the signals that you give, the way that I can lean in and really kind of show you how imperative what I am saying is just by my posture, and all my body language. And you miss a lot of that when you're not in person.
I also think that it's not as bad if you have two people that know each other really well, like me and you. The dynamic isn't near as different on Zoom versus being in studio as it would be as if it's us doing an interview with somebody over Zoom. Then I think those things come into play quite a bit.
Very true. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The lag is definitely something that we have to, contend with sometimes on Zoom. And but there are some pros too, the camera angles that Zoom does for us. We don't have a young Jamie to switch back from one of us to the other.
Yeah.
And so I really like that aspect of using Zoom, and it's very convenient. And it just kind of, it does the camera work for you. I think it's the biggest thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
Is why I like it. And also there is a little bit of, back on the con side, there's a little bit more of a difficulty in timing. I guess this goes with the dynamic of the conversation that we've already mentioned, but there's a little bit of a timing that is not so in sync.
Yeah.
When you're Zooming.
It worries me too sometimes, because I can tell there's a little bit more of a little bit more of a lag between you talking back to me. And I think, oh crap, did my internet stop? Because I can tell that it's just you waiting,
right,
to jump in. So there's that for sure. But
definitely.
Yeah.
But overall, I like the Zoom, and I think it's kind of fun to switch it up too.
Yeah.
To be doing this for a while and kind of just get our rhythm with it. And it's different. It's fresh for us. And once again, I just love the way that Zoom does the camera work for us. It's just interesting to me.
What do you think about, so I have an instance here about a doctor. Doctors can do a lot of Zoom visits now too. Like they have these like telehealth type deals and stuff where a lot of times you don't even have to go to urgent care, and then doctors can actually prescribe you, medicine and things like that. And, all those kinds of things by just having a conversation with them and, showing like a picture of your throat. If you have strep throat or something like that, a lot of times they can just do that. Do you think doctors like that? Or do you think they'd rather you be in the office with them? I would think in situations like that, like it sucks that you can't do the in-person thing with people, because that's kind of why you became a doctor or a nurse probably. However, it's taking a lot of the risk out of it, right? On the doctor or nurse getting strep throat because the person there already had it or something like that, right?
I would think so. I think, in my opinion, and of course, it would be best to ask a doctor what he or she actually thinks. But just from my perspective, though, I would think it would be more beneficial for the doctor than the patient.
Yeah.
Because there is not so much for me and you in these conversations, because you're really used to doing Zoom podcast, and it's I'm no spring chicken myself. But for a lot of intents and purposes, the virtual, there's a coldness to it,
Yeah.
And I'm talking about from everything. I was at a virtual conference the other day with Wiley Psychology. It was this big conference, and they had some big name speakers, and it was virtual. It was really cool because I could watch the conference and listen to it as well, and still like do other little things, check my email and things like that as I'm doing that.
Right.
But at the same time, there's a coldness to it. On the conference, like in that setting, really quickly, one of the favorite aspects of the conference for me is not just the speakers, it's all the other people I get to see. Like every time I go to a conference in the States somewhere, I see these people. A lot of them I don't see unless I'm at a conference. And so it's a little bit of a reunion.
Yeah.
But it's also kind of that camaraderie, that socializing that kind of comes into play. Counseling, to me, there's also, it's not, I mean, it's a science, it's an art form to some degree, and you can polish that art form to do it virtually, and I think really be effective. I do think virtual counseling is effective. I would assume that virtual doctor's checkups, with your primary, can be very effective as well, especially if you're too sick to get out of the house, right? It's
Right.
definitely better than nothing, and that's my usual tagline. But there's something about being in person with someone. And I also think in general, not necessarily for me, because I think for a lot of purposes, I might like the virtual doctor visit more than anything. If I were seeing a counselor, I'd rather be seeing a counselor, but I don't like going to doctor's offices. I never have.
Right. It kind of takes the anxiety out of it a little bit, right? And that was
Right.
part of why I brought this up, because Friday I was supposed to have a doctor's appointment with a doctor up in St. Louis. Well, I knew that this wasn't going to be like a physical appointment. Like they weren't going to have to like do anything to me or anything like that. It was probably just going to end up being like a 10-minute conversation. And then I was going to be out the door. And I was just thinking in my head, do I really need to drive all the way to St. Louis to have a 10-minute conversation with a doctor to come back home? It's like, I really don't want to do it. So I called up there and they're like, well, we can probably just switch you to a Zoom visit as long as it's not going to be a physical visit or anything. I was like, okay, cool. So it was supposed to be at 3:00 on Friday. And at 3:15, I'm looking up at the clock while I'm feeding my son and realize, well, I forgot that doctor appointment was going to happen. So now I'm probably going to get charged a fee for missing the call. So about 3:45, I decide to call the doctor, and they're like, well, they don't have you in the system as a no call, no show or anything. So he's probably just behind. So he probably hasn't even got to your appointment yet. And I'm like, it's 3:45. My appointment was supposed to be at 3:00. So you're telling me that if I would have logged on at 3:00, I would still be sitting here waiting? And they're like, yeah, I mean, he's probably just behind. I'm like, Jesus.
Wow.
So that also tells me that I would have drove up there and sat there for over 45 minutes to get my appointment, then do a 10-minute conversation and then drive home.
Right.
So luckily they just rescheduled my appointment and I didn't have to worry about it, but it was a fiasco.
Yeah. See, I have no personal anecdotal experience, no stories to give on this experience. So in general, though, I would say that it's probably more difficult, like it is for most things, considering the generation who is visiting the doctor or seeking counseling or whatever the case, because older people just aren't as hip with the technology. You and I are kind of in the middle, especially me, because I am older per se, I'm middle-aged, but I've been hip with technology for a long time. The younger people are even more hip with technology. So for them, it's just like second nature. I would imagine down the road, they wouldn't even blink an eye. They're going to be so used to virtual learning and virtual this and virtual that it's not even a question. They'll be surprised, like, what, you want me to actually come to your office? No.
Right.
No, I've got my phone right here. Why do I need to go out of the house or whatever?
Right.
So
Well,
I think with the
it's
age gap, it's definitely something.
Yeah, the funniest thing that I've seen about that is that, so like with my work, as far as insurance goes and stuff like that, there was one time where they gave us like this big list of things that you can do through telehealth. I think it's what it's called or something like that. And so basically what they want you to do is they don't want you to have to pay these bills for visits to the doctor if you can just go through like this telehealth thing or whatever. Well, they gave a list, and I think they just accidentally put one wrong on there, but they gave a list of all the things that you can do by just going through telehealth and not having to leave your house. Well, they put colonoscopy on there. And I was like, I want to see how they do that. I'm not really sure how you show that through your phone, but
how badly do you want to see how they do that? Because
I might be too interested.
this is reminiscent to me of the smart toilet conversation we had not too long ago.
Yeah.
So maybe if you've got a smart toilet, he can kind of take a look and, you get to kill two birds with one stone, right? You go in to relieve yourself, and you got a colonoscopy checkup in the meantime. What a world we live in, man! What a day! What a time to be alive.
Yep.
So, I don't know. Interesting stuff, though. The world is going more and more virtual. I'm kind of torn. To some degree, it's okay, but you know how I have a fear of technology. It's not a fear. I have a concern, but it's a little more than just a concern. That doesn't quite. It's somewhere in between fear and concern. Okay, that technology it's too pervasive. We're trading our privacy for convenience, and I don't know. It's a slippery slope to me that I just have a concern about it. So the more we slide into this robotic technological age that we're leaning into at full speed, we're going that direction. There's no stopping it. Maybe I'm just like that. That's showing my age. That I don't know. I'm trying to like grasp onto the old ways.
What about? So I mean, as far as me, I don't think I've seen a whole lot of people in our area do it, but I wouldn't consider like our area a really high technological area either. I'm sure like LA or maybe even St. Louis or New York or, bigger cities are probably more about it. But how often do you see people using their phone as like a payment system and stuff like that? Because a lot of the things, even like a Schnucks or something like that, if you've got like an Apple Pay or whatever, you can just, I guess, swipe your phone across the thing and it'll directly take it out of your account. So, I mean, have you ever done anything like that? Would you ever do anything like that? And have you seen a lot of people doing it?
Okay, so I have not done it myself. I have seen some people do it. I know some, I have a friend who uses his watch to pay for stuff. And I've seen, like, if you go to Starbucks, which I loathe Starbucks for the most part, but my daughter, she's almost 13, thinks that Starbucks is, the bomb diggity or whatever these kids are saying nowadays. She likes
sure
it.
That's not it.
I am certain that that's not it. But when I go to Starbucks, that's a trendy place, so you see people who are hip on technology and they're always into the newer trends. So I've seen it like at places like that. But if I go to Schnucks or Lowe's or Menards or wherever I'm going, I don't see hardly anybody do it. Now, would I do it? Probably, man. I gave up.
how does it work? Like, I mean, is it, is like Apple Pay kind of like is it like a PayPal or something? Like, how do you put money into that account? Is it just like I don't know, like a Visa card or something like that you can load money onto? Is that how Apple Pay works too?
I can't sit here and pretend like I know a whole lot about it, but I
Okay.
have put a card on my phone. And so you can use your debit card and you put it on your, because I guess it's the chip or something. I don't know, but you take a picture of your card and it stores it in your Apple Pay. And
Gotcha.
then when you want to use it, you double click on the home screen and that card pops up. And so I think it just reads the chip on there. And so
Gotcha.
all you got to do is show your phone. My buddy Steve, we went to the concert the other night, Gojira, fantastic show. I've already talked about it, but I'll say it one more time. It was fantastic. But we went up to get some drinks, and it was card only, which was cool because that's typically what people pay with nowadays anyway. So he just sticks his watch up to like where you would put your debit card in at, and it reads it, and he's off to the races. And so I guess he pushed the right button, had the card ready, it put his watch up there, and that was it. And I mean, it logs all your charges as well. So you can look back and see, okay, well, I spent way too much tonight. I got to go home and explain to the wife why that happened. Like
Right.
she's going to be surprised. But yeah, that's it. You put whatever card you want to. I think you can put, you can stack cards in there and decide which one you want to use. So it as far as I know, I don't know that Apple has its own financial system itself where you got to get any of their cards or anything. I don't think that's the case. I think you just use whatever you have and put it on the device.
Gotcha.
But once again, I feel like I told you I got this new computer not too long ago, this new laptop. I didn't get anything special. I just needed something until I can get the one that I actually want. But I had to get something new because mine was in bad shape. And I started working on some of the things, and things are different now. You know, I like getting a computer that I keep for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So I pay for a good one. I did that with my desktop. I got that back in what, 07. And if it wasn't for the operating system not being viable anymore, it wouldn't update securities, things like that. The security update wouldn't work. I think that thing would still be running because it never did quit on me.
Yeah.
And my former laptop's kind of the same way, but it started really slowing down. My point is though, I never like upgraded the software, never really, and my work laptop, I've got an older operating system on that. It just works fine. It was made in 2014. And I love that thing. So when I find something I like, I don't necessarily need to know the newest stuff or have the newest stuff technology wise. But fast forward to when I have to get something new, I start working with it. And I mean, it's not like unrecognizable, but a lot of just the little things like Adobe PDF reader. It's like, I don't even think it comes with the computers anymore. You got to buy it. And probably a subscription now. Everything is subscription, but there's different PDF readers. Windows itself, the Office, which I got 365 because I have to have Office. It has its own PDF reader, but everything's just different, man. And so I'm having to learn all these little nuanced things. I couldn't tell you how to work an Apple Watch because I don't really want one. I have really no desire whatsoever.
Yeah, but
it's like it's a thing though. A lot of people have them, and I'm clueless about it. And so I don't consider myself complete. I'm not. Like ignorant of technology, but it just goes by so fast. They update things so fast that I feel like I'm just a little bit behind the times sometimes.
Yeah. You know, something interesting. I don't know if it'd be the technology thing, but it goes back to the bank type thing. Something that we just did not too long ago. And I had heard about it originally because I think it's called it's Acorn, I think. Have you heard that Acorn app?
I don't think so. Remind me what it is, and maybe.
So basically, it's a company or it's an app where when you spend money, it rolls whatever's left over to the next dollar into this account for you. And I always thought that was a really cool idea. Well, then I found out that we could set that up online through our bank. So so we set it up to where if you spend $1.01 on something, the extra 99 cents to round it up is going to go over into a savings account, which you don't really think it would add up to that much. But, over a year, and it's money that you're never going to worry about anyways. It's, less than $1 every time. But, if you use your cards, your debit card 100 times and it's almost $1, over those 100 times, you're almost putting $100 into back in savings that you weren't even going to worry about anyways.
Yeah. Yeah. Now I do know that banks do that.
Yeah.
I've heard somebody else say, "Hey, you should really do that." I was like, you know what? I really should. And I forgot about it. I didn't get around to it. I still should though. It's a great thing, but I didn't know there was an Acorn app that did that for you. But
Yeah.
if my bank does it anyway, I don't need an app to do it for me, but
True.
it is a great way. You know, that's what all these fast food restaurants are doing nowadays with the charities. And, you know, because especially if I'm spending like, you know, up to 90 cents and above to the next dollar. Yeah, I usually say yes, especially if I recognize the charity, which, you know, some of them I don't. And I'm a charitable guy. I like to give, but I don't just like to give without knowing what I'm giving to, because there's a lot of shysters out there that, you know, are just going to take it and run with it.
Yeah.
And once again, I don't like McDonald's. It's the worst fast food restaurant, in my opinion, out there. I just can't, I just don't like the food, you know, and I hate their whole model of things. But my daughter loves it. Once again, the world revolves around her. And when she wants McDonald's, I usually go ahead and round up there because it's for the Ronald McDonald House.
Right.
And that is a great thing. Do you know what they do?
Yeah. Actually, like Donnie Fandango from The Point, he does that radiothon every year where he does. It's like I think it's 28 hours every year, and every year they make more money and more money and more money, and it's like a lot of money they pull out every year.
Yeah. Yeah. So they actually house people up near the Children's Hospital in St. Louis.
Yep.
Where the parents can stay while their children are, you know, getting worked on,
right,
getting healthy again. And for some terminally ill kids, man, that's just awesome. I mean, that's a charity that as long as the money's going where it's supposed to, and I think they even state publicly that like 100% goes to the Ronald McDonald House. There's no other kind of administrative cost or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
You can't beat that, man. You can't beat that. So that's just a little bit more of a reason for me to go to McDonald's, even though I don't like the food. I do like the frappes though, but man, they're sweet.
I don't even want to see what the sugar count is in that.
I don't look.
Yesterday I bought, and I tried to talk myself out of doing it, but I ended up doing it anyways, just because I was curious. I bought a cream soda Pepsi because it was new and I hadn't seen one before. And I managed to get about halfway through the bottle before I turned the bottle around to see how much sugar was in it. But yeah, about 65 grams or milligrams, I guess. It's grams, right?
Yeah, it's grams.
Yeah, about 65 grams.
That's
ridiculous.
That's 2 days. That's 2 days worth.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
But you know, what do you do? I think it's okay every once in a while.
That's my policy. It's not something I do all the time. Like a lot of days, I don't get any added sugar in anything that I eat.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then some days I'll get 65 grams in 1 cup of whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't usually get it in soda, but sometimes I'll get it in a frappe, which that thing probably has 160 grams.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I don't even want to see.
Yeah, it is what it is. I don't do it very often, but those are good.
Mm-hmm.
Every time I get a headache, a brain freeze, every time there's something about those things where they don't just get my head neither. They also get my chest.
Uh-huh.
I get this frozen chest, frozen head at the same time.
Yeah.
And for those, sometimes up to like 10 seconds, dude, I'm calling on death to come and save me. Man. It's tough.
I get it. This is
ridiculous.
This is the big one. We're over. We're done.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, this is how I go, but I'm not real surprised because I do it every time I get a frappe. Fortunately, I don't drink them very often.
Yeah.
Let me read you something I found on social media somewhere not too long ago. And it says, you can literally learn any skill you want for free on YouTube. You can become a person of value in a matter of months. Just a few years ago, this wasn't possible. If you were lucky enough to be born in this era, take full advantage of it. Now, I'd like to say that this is absolutely true. Now, I don't think you can learn any skill. Like I can't go on YouTube and learn how to do brain surgery. But I know I've mentioned this on the show before. I have fixed a washing machine, which I know nothing about, by going to YouTube and I did it. And so I know you have recently also been to YouTube and learned how to do something. So
Yeah,
talk about that.
But before I get to that, answer me what does that mean by a person of value? You can be a person of value. That seems like an odd statement.
Well, I think they're talking about more of an economic type of value. Like you can learn a skill, a trade. You can learn how to fix washing machines. You can learn how to, whittle wood. I don't know, whatever, something that's going to make you some money.
Gotcha.
You can learn how to fix cars on there. I've seen that. You can learn how to do plumbing. I've seen that. I've learned how to do some light carpentry work on there. You can learn how to patch a hole in the wall. You can learn how to install a ceiling fan. I mean, all of that stuff. It's on YouTube. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I can't believe how much information is out there that you can watch and say, you can almost like specify exactly what it is you're working on. Like let's, for cars, especially, I think if I'm working on a 75 Mustang, I can go online on YouTube and probably find someone working on a 75 Mustang. It's insane. But if I'm working on,
don't you get mad whenever you can't find it? Like it's YouTube's fault that I can't find exactly the type of washing machine that I'm looking for to work on.
Not really for me, because I go in with low expectations, even still. But it's almost never ceased to amaze me, though. I can't think of a time off the top of my head when I was actually disappointed that I couldn't find something on there. So it's pretty insane, man.
Yeah,
it's pretty insane.
Yeah. So I fixed a dryer that same way through YouTube. When we redid our house that we're in now, the majority of the things that I did in this house, and I mean, we revamped the entire house. That's taking all doors out and putting new doors in. That's putting flooring down. That's, taking a backsplash down around the kitchen, putting a new backsplash up, taking countertops out, putting new countertops in, all that kind of stuff. Like that was literally all YouTube. And yesterday, I actually winterized my camper for the first time, which I've never done before. And I did that by YouTube also.
Did you find I don't know if you found the exact camper, but did you find something similar to yours that was like, oh, this particular plug is right here?
Well, see, that's the hard part. I found the brand of camper, which was close enough. But the problem is with campers, so many things are in so many different spots that you can have like two campers that are pretty much identical, same brand and same year and everything, but they may have like a water pump that's in a different spot in one camper than the other. And it gets pretty ridiculous because like you have to to winterize a camper, you have to have access to your water pump. You have to have access to the water heater. You've got to be able to do this, that, and the other all throughout the camper to be able to do it. And I knew I was getting into something. Like I had to watch the video and then find out what parts I was going to need. And then I had to go on Amazon and order those parts, then get those parts in, then figure out exactly how to use those parts by watching the YouTube video again. And then watching the YouTube video the entire time I'm actually doing it.
Wow. So does the camper come with like blueprints to tell you where all this stuff is, or is it just
Absolutely
like this?
Not.
So it's like a game of hide and go seek. It's like hunting Easter eggs. Hey, I found it. Maybe let me twist it and see if it leaks fluid.
Yeah. So when I last year we had a company winterize our camper, and then we took it back and had them de-winterize it. Well, I got it home and I got it set up, and then we go to try to get some water to come through it, and I can hear the water pump turn on, but I can't get any water to come through the lines into the sinks. Trying to figure it out. My wife calls them. They can't tell me what's going on, and they also can't tell me where the water pump is in the camper. They give me ideas. Was it under the sink? No. Is it under the refrigerator? No. Is it under the bed in the cabin? No. Is it under the bunk in the other bed? No. So finally, my last ditch effort was to look underneath the sink in the bathroom, and I actually had to unscrew the whole bottom part and pull up the bottom floor underneath the sink and found the water pump. And then all I had to do was turn a valve, a half a turn, and my water pump worked fine. It was because they forgot to turn that one valve, and I almost had to hook the camper back up and take it all the way over there just for them to do that.
Wow.
Yeah. Luckily, I found it at the last second.
So this definitely qualifies as a first world problem.
Absolutely. I feel like most of mine are. Like, I don't know if you seen my post the other day, but I posted on Facebook and I said, hey, Hulu, how come you haven't figured out how to make your commercials the same volume level as your shows? Because every time you watch a show, you have to crank the TV up, and then the commercial comes on and it blasts your ears, and you have to be on the volume button to turn it way down. But then I ended it saying, this is coming from someone with first world problems. So I had to acknowledge it, because I also don't want other people to jump on there and be like, you understand that's a first world problem, right? Just turn your volume button down. But I actually had more people agree with me because they understand too.
Yeah, it's funny how, with all due respect to you and to me, because I think all of my problems are first world too. There are some universal human problems, emotions and a lot of mental health problems. Some of them are actually perpetuated, or even you can find their origins within first world problems, because a lot of the anxiety that we face nowadays is actually, if you were starving, it wouldn't even be an issue because you're trying to find food,
Right.
And, but yeah, I think most of our problems are first world problems nowadays. And that's, you and I, neither one of us come from families who had a lot of money.
Right.
We didn't grow up like that. I grew up, we always had food on the table. Don't get me wrong, but I'm doing much better than my parents were doing, when I was their age.
But that's
when
my
they were
thing.
my age.
But that's my thing too, is like, how did they live without YouTube?
I know.
Like, how did they do things? Like, how do you how they did it? They read books on how to do it instead of watching videos on YouTube. Whenever I moved into this house and I knew I was going to have to revamp a bunch of stuff, my uncle gave me this big book of construction and whatever. And he said, pretty much anything you're going to need to know how to do should be in here. And I'm thinking, man, there ain't no way I'm even opening this book. And then we got to talking it one day and I was asking him some questions. He goes, it's probably in that book. I was like, well, I guess I'm not talking to you anymore, because you're just going to tell me to look back at the book, and I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to look at YouTube.
I know. And I am a bit older than you, and I can clearly remember the time before technology was what it is today.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly remember, like, I remember like 4 channels on the TV, and you might too, but I have that perspective that our kids aren't going to have. They're not going to understand what life was like before this technology, unless everything goes south and we lose the grid or whatever, or just lose the internet for some reason. But my dad has given me some books. I've gotten some from his library too when he passed away. And I remember growing up, my mom and dad had these books, like how to fix practically anything, or how to get stains out of anything, or things like that. Because I think even further back than that, it's like my grandma and grandpa's. It's like, how did they even know how to do it? And it was all just like passed along knowledge. I mean, you had to ask somebody to talk, or trial and error. You had to try it and see if it works. I got a stain on my shirt. Let's see if this lemon juice will take it out or something. I don't know.
Right.
Nope. That made it worse and ate a hole in my shirt. I guess I better try something else. So it's insane now that we just have it at a push of a button. And we become so spoiled that things like louder commercials on Hulu is what we complain about, and I complain about all kinds of just nonsense too. It's like, like you were saying earlier, if I can't find the brand on YouTube that I'm specifically looking for, it's a nuisance. Like, well, YouTube really dropped the ball on this one. Thanks a lot, YouTube. We become so spoiled that things like hunting for our food and making sure that, we have shelter before the next cold season, it's not even on our radar, man. It's crazy. I just hope.
What's funny too is it's not even YouTube's fault. It's like the fact that nobody uploaded that exact video to YouTube.
Yeah, but you can't go around just blaming everybody. You've got to centralize your anger.
Are you sure? I don't think you know how life works.
No, I mean, I don't
know how people work.
But it's not even, you're not even mad at, who are you going to blame for not uploading this particular thing? So I like to try and, be able to define my anger. And so I blame the technology that's bringing this information to me.
Or not bringing
very good. That's right. So I was trying, man, talking about that. There was a song lyric that came into my head, and I can't remember it now. It was just on the tip of my brain tongue. I wish I could have, because it was
Who was it?
yeah, and I can't remember.
Oh, okay.
My mind's in podcast mode right now. If I try to do that, I was hoping it would just come to me, but it doesn't. My brain works like that sometimes. I have some trouble compartmentalizing when I'm on a certain path to try and my recall. It's all to do with my recall. Very strange, but I digress. A lot of the times we get into what we call definitive thinking, what you and I have kind of termed definitive thinking. And it tries to bottleneck us into one way of thinking or another, and we could think, a lot of us have thought, I have thought, and I know a lot of older people than me think that you can't like teach an old dog new tricks per se. There's a lot of, it's an old saying. There's a lot of people out there like that. With the proliferation of technology and YouTube in particular, things like that, you can teach an old dog new tricks.
Yeah.
You can learn to fix a washing machine. You can learn to winterize your camper. You can learn to build a wall,
Yeah, but isn't like that term is a little more deeper than that though too, right? Like you can't teach an old dog new tricks. It's more about like there's a certain way that people do things and they don't want to change their ways, right? Isn't that what you would consider can't teach an old dog new tricks? Like that, kind of like a hard-headed thing. Like this is the way I've always done this. I'm not going to change my ways. So that's what they kind of mean by that.
I think in a broad term, yeah, I think it could mean all the above, because I've heard people say it with more of just the casual definition that I was mentioning, just that, well, I've never fixed a washing machine and I'm too old to learn how to now. I've actually heard people say that. Right?
Okay.
And so teaching an old dog new tricks it is a matter of being set in your ways though. And you're right though, in a broad sense, that's also encapsulates things like, let's say, political ideology. You can't teach someone or they become so set in their ways that they're not willing to look at other sides. They're not willing to listen. And that's a big problem that we have in society today, right?
Mm-hmm.
We are so polarized according to our political affiliation that it becomes part of a thinking problem. I'm going to go ahead and just put it that way, that we have. And the powers that be, quote unquote, they utilize that. They capitalize on the fact that they can separate people, and it's the old divide and conquer routine. And we all, because we are old dogs trying not to learn new tricks per se, then we become polarized ourselves, and we polarize ourselves from each other depending on what political ideology that we want to prescribe to.
Right. I mean, I've seen that kind of thing happen in, businesses and things like that too, where you have higher ups who have been doing this for the longest time. And this is what they, at least at one time, worked, and they don't want to give that up. When you can bring in newer eyes, maybe younger eyes that may find, have a better way of doing things, but the older generation doesn't want to give that up because that's not the way we've always done things,
Yeah, no, totally. I agree. And because let's go back to doctors for a minute. I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, maybe even a little bit more around that time though, I realized through experience that I prefer younger doctors than I do older doctors. And it was all based off of the younger doctor that I had started to see then, the first younger doctor I've ever seen in my life, because, of course, I was so young at one point in time, everybody was older if you're a doctor. But I had seen older doctors before, and I had always assumed that, the wisdom of being around for a long time, they've been in practice for a while, unless they had like this reputation for killing a bunch of people or just bad prescriptions or whatever, then I just assumed that was the guy that or lady that I wanted to see. As I got older, about 10 years ago, that's when I started getting older. I saw this young guy. I saw this younger doctor, and his approach was so fresh. It's like they use this person-centered approach now. which is a derivative as far as I know. I'm sure, med school has maybe their own track for this, but in my field, it's a person-centered approach to counseling or psychology. And that approach is where your wisdom and your expertise is a tool, but it's not the most important thing in the room. The most important thing is the other person, the patient.
Right.
And your wisdom, your expertise is important, because otherwise I just go see anybody who has good social skills, but I need some medical advice here, or I need a certain, medication or something. So that skill is important, but they would actually talk to you like a person. They would actually and they would consider you as the whole person, the holistic approach. And so it was actually somebody I could sit down and chat with and talk to. And I didn't feel like I was just in a room with some dude or lady with cold hands when they put their stethoscope up to my chest or whatever, that was so disconnected from me. And it was important that change happened in the medical field, because now I only see younger doctors. Some of them nowadays are actually younger than me, which is interesting.
Right. Yeah. It's, to me, what I've seen, and I haven't seen it lately, but I have seen going to the doctor can be rough too, because of how many people they are trying to see in a day. And I've been in a doctor's office where you can tell that they're basically out of breath when they come in your room, and you can tell that it almost makes you feel like you're a burden on them by trying to take the time to explain everything that you've got going on for them to diagnose what you have, because they have to get to the next person. So they're trying to do these things as fast as they can. And I've seen that happen before, and you just don't feel like you're getting what you're saying. You're not getting that full attention from them. They're just there to diagnose whatever you got and get out the door. Luckily, I've got a doctor now, like a primary, that I go to, mainly only go to once a year unless I have an issue, just kind of get blood work done and stuff like that, just to make sure that I'm on the up and up. But she is really good about, taking the time to sit and listen to all the issues you've got going on and all that kind of stuff. And, kind of making you feel like you are important for being there, not just another patient that you've got to get through to get to the next.
Yeah, definitely. And another way that getting over myself and broadening my horizons on this particular subject is how, at first I didn't want to see a nurse practitioner, because this was a person who wasn't a doctor, but was standing in for the doctor to do what the doctor typically does.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, I have also learned that nurse practitioners are even more personable, in my experience, than a lot of doctors are, because they aren't doctors. And the doctor's workloads, like you mentioned, are super heavy. It's almost like an assembly line that you're put up on the belt, and they see you next, and you just keep rolling down, then you roll to billing, so they can get your information.
Right.
And nurse practitioners are just a little bit more personal, or more personable and personal. They just have a good social skill, warmness about them, and it's very refreshing to be able, since I have to go to that awful place called the doctor's office and sometimes the hospital.
But don't you know, I mean, this may be a newfound thing for you, as you say, but if you call the doctor and you say, call the doctor's office, you're trying to schedule an appointment, let's say, can I set up anything next week? No, the doctor doesn't have anything available next week, but do you want to see the nurse practitioner instead? Have you gotten that before? Does that give you just the feeling of, maybe the nurse practitioner isn't as good as the doctor? This is I can't get into the doctor, but so now I just have to take what I can get. And I know that sounds really bad, and I don't feel that way. I'm just saying that's almost how that conversation makes you feel. It's well, the guy you want to see is not here, but I can give you this guy instead, or this woman, either way.
Yeah. I know what you're saying. I don't have anything to back this up. Just an idea, though. I think that perhaps it's because a lot of people would say, no, I want to see the doctor. So I don't think it's because necessarily it's their second choice. I think it's because they assume it's maybe yours. So, and since you scheduled or are trying to schedule with this particular person, they want to let you know that's not going to happen until months down the road or whatever.
Right.
But you can see this person. I know it's not the doctor, but And that nurse practitioner works under that doctor. And so that's the procedure, the process is that nurse practitioner still relates all your information to the doctor. They have, they staff all these things.
Mhm.
And so when they go and they say, well, this, and this was the symptoms, diagnosed with this, and this was the prescription that I prescribed. And the doctor's like, yep, looks good. You did a good job. Or he's like, oh crap, call that person back.
Right.
Which has never happened that I know of, where the doctor's like, you just completely, like, this person's going to grow a tail. Look what you've done. So I don't think it's, that, mistakes are going to happen. Doctors make mistakes, but I think most of the time that these nurse practitioners in my experience, not just as a patient, but also working with like psychiatric nurse practitioners. There's a psych MP that I work with pretty closely, and I would prefer that person. I prefer working with that person, and I would prefer, like, if I needed to be seen for psychiatric purposes, I would rather see him than any psychiatrist I've ever dealt with.
Right.
So when I go into the doctor's office nowadays, I know enough to I understand that it's individualized, so I assess the person as a patient or as a, somebody that I'm working with, collaborating with.
I mean, that's an issue that I've actually come across too. In the past year, I went into a doctor. My primary wasn't in, so I ended up going to another doctor because I had some issues going on. And so as you said, I kind of know. I'm not saying I'm smart by any means, but I know a little more than the average person about like terms and stuff to use on what I think could be going on when I go in there. Now, in my head, I'm thinking, well, this could ease the burden on them to tell them, hey, I think this is what's going on. Can you just give me the medication for it, or whatever that situation is? Well, this doctor took it as, it's literally said this to me. I'm assuming you just Googled that, and that's not what's going on. Why would you say that to a patient? I understand that that's a thing, and I understand that some people do that. They Google and they freak themselves out because you think you got cancer when and it's actually just a tummy ache or something. I understand that, and you go in there and you're freaking out, but I was not like freaking out about anything. I just told her, listen, this is the issues that I think that I have going on, and this is what I think it could be. And she just told me, I'm sure you just Googled that. I don't think that's what this is. I'm like, Jesus, that's like, you just demeaned me for no reason.
It was condescending.
Yeah.
Even if she was right, her approach was completely condescending.
Right.
How dare you Google something and then talk to a doctor about it? Did you not see the degree on my wall, you
right.
jackass? And that's what I'm talking about, because from that experience, I would not see that lady anymore.
Yeah. And I haven't.
I have another experience myself where I had a little issue going on. We couldn't find out. We did some tests, did labs. Nothing was hitting, which was a good thing, but the issue persisted. I was glad that the lab showed I didn't have anything severely wrong, but I needed to figure out what was causing my symptoms. And so I did a little research, and nowadays doctors, you can they have portals. The doctor's offices have portals that you can communicate, and they show your lab results and all that good stuff. And so I communicated with him. I was like, hey doc, do you think maybe this is the case? And he's like, well, let's try it, because it was just a one-time ordeal that he could prescribe me a medicine and see if it cleared up. Bam, it happened. And not only was it cool that it cleared up for me and that things were cool, but it also is the case that he was open. That was the biggest thing. He didn't just shut me down and say, look, are you Googling stuff again, James? We've been through this, son.
Right.
No, he's never spoken to me like that. And that's why I continue to go back to him, because he's not a condescending character. He's very personable, and he's a nurse practitioner. And I would rather see him than a lot of the doctors that I've actually, that I've worked with. And so that's what I need in my life. Someone who is going to listen and try to work things out and do the best they can. And he also tells me he doesn't know sometimes. He's like, I don't know. I don't know what it is, because your labs are showing this, and, your symptoms were persisting. So let's just see what happens, or let's try this. And I just like that openness. I think it's important.
Have you been to the doctor recently where you have to use like one of these apps to get your, like, if you get blood work done and you'll get test results back through the app and stuff like that, the doctor will still call you, but I can see how it could be a very anxiety inducing thing, because there are a lot of times where you can get blood work done and say like the hospital has to send the blood work off to test it or whatever. You will get the results in that app a lot of times before the doctor will even tell you what the results are. And if there's something positive in that, you are freaking out, especially if you don't know what you're looking at. If it just says you have high levels of this, or you have high levels of this, or it's positive for this or positive for that, you like, and you haven't even talked to the doctor yet. You just know what the results are. That can be very, very, have a lot of tension off of that.
That is what I was referring to with the
Oh,
portal.
it is? Oh, okay.
That's exactly that.
Okay.
That's exactly what that is. You have a portal, and it has all your information on there.
Gotcha.
You get your billing information, but you also get your diagnoses, you get your labs. And yes, I've been through that. I've seen where my labs come in and it shows high in something or out of normal range or whatever. And so I go to hit Google, and lo and behold, I've got leprosy and I only have 2 days to live. So it's very anxiety provoking. And so that's, I get the call from, it's not even the nurse practitioner in my case, but I still call him Doc. It's not even from Doc. It's from, one of his people, one of his assistants there. And like, look, I noticed that this lab showed this and this, and that's got me kind of spooked. What's going on? I was like, am I going to die? Is this it? And she's like, let me talk to the doctor and find out for you. And so she goes to talk to him, and she's like, no, he said that's nothing to worry about. He's like, that is the normal limit there. Even if you're a little bit out of that, she's like, the lab is kind of insignificant unless it's way, way like out of normal limits.
Right.
So I'm like, oh, good. Because Google said that I wasn't going to make it.
Dr. Google's an asshole sometimes.
He is, dude. He's so cold. He's not personable at all. So this definitive thinking, let's go through some of that really quickly, because we are running short on time. And I wanted to, I know I've mentioned cognitive distortions on the show before. And, there's a reason why you and I started talking about definitive thinking. So in other words, basically what we're talking about is hard-headedness in a sense, or just the lack of being able to be dialectical, the lack of being able to see two sides to something, the lack of empathy, the lack of understanding that not everybody sees things the way that you see things, or the way that I see things, but the fact that their opinion is based off their experience and it's still important to listen to, even if you disagree with it. We have such a lack of that nowadays, and that's where the real, via social media, of course, you and I started talking about this definitive thinking. Well, this is the right answer, and that's just it. There is no other right answer, and you can't convince me otherwise. To the extent that they won't even listen to any other sides of the the information or the opinions or whatever. So I wanted to touch on some of these really quickly. These cognitive distortions. These are otherwise known as unhelpful thinking styles, and unfortunately, I thought I had this down as polished as I could, but now I realize I got to come back to this screen to share it. So because it won't let me share from my other view there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and share this screen, and then we'll just talk about it and see how it goes.
Okay.
And for those of you just listening, I am showing some slides, which if you're not, start checking out our YouTube channel. We're working. It's still a little rough, but we're getting to the point where we can start showing some visuals. For one thing, to reference, so it's not just us talking out of our own asses, which does happen for me sometimes. But it's also something to look at, because some people are visual learners, or they take things in better in a visual manner. So this is how we're going to start things right here. And this is just my little beginning slide here. It's definitive thinking is the enemy of critical thinking. That's my own quote there, Colt. What do you think of that?
I like it.
Okay, perfect. Let me go on to the next one here. This is our first unhelpful thinking style, and it's all or nothing thinking. Okay, so thinking in absolutes such as always, never, or every. So in other words, that's when we say things like always, something is always this way. Like this person is always such a jerk, and the way that we can combat these things is by really using common sense. And we have to do this because these are oftentimes automatic in our brains. Okay. And one of the reasons why I wanted to show these, and I may talk about it again in a little more depth in a future show, because what I would like to do, and this has always been kind of my idea for what being cerebral in this day and age means. It means being able to sit and listen to the other side. Well, I can't do that if I feel like the Republicans are always wrong. Everything that they believe in is always evil, or the Democrats are always evil. And so what I want to do is try, if I can reach 1 to 10, 100 people, to help them to be able to navigate in today's day and age, especially with the polarization that's on social media and the polarization that's in our political processes, just to start using let's say not using some of these cognitive distortions when surveying what's in front of them in politics and as well as their everyday lives. The next one here is disqualifying the positive, which means we're only recognizing the negative aspects of a situation while ignoring the positive. And this happens all the time as well. We don't take time. We do this in our own lives, or we do it to somebody else. Like you may only notice that your spouse, you disqualify any of the positive they do and only highlight the negative things that get on your nerves. And we could do that with people on social media. We can do this with our politicians as well. And realizing that I have so much against politicians, I'm still trying to find the positive things about it. I'm still looking for a silver lining in almost everything. And God help me, I hope I can find it.
To go with that too, like we've talked about it in the past, I think, as far as like being in a workplace, you've seen a lot of managers and bosses in different places that we've worked where they only, you can do the same thing and be great all year round, but whenever you do something wrong on accident or something, that's where the conversations come in. It's not, oh, you did a great job, or you always do a great job. It's always, well, why did you do this? It's always the negative that you think about, not the positive. And that's really what tears people down.
It does. And we talk about this a lot in my industry too, because, we catch a lot of people with psychiatric conditions. They have mental health conditions, and they're in a program to try to help them to reintegrate back into the community. So in a sense, they're under a microscope by the nature of what we do. But we always try to encourage our staff to, don't just notice that this person has poor coping skills. Also note when they're doing well. Also note that, yeah, they may have had an anger outburst, last week, but last month they had like the 6 per week. And so they're doing much better. We can't just qualify the negative. We also have to qualify the positive.
And also,
next
something to think about that too is like with children, your children, it's very, very important to not just, focus on disciplining them when they're doing something wrong, but also, pushing them and saying you're proud of them and things along that line when they're doing something great or doing something well.
You got it. Employees, same way.
Yeah.
With your staff, and little things. It doesn't have to be, they didn't have to like save the day and save 100 man hours because they caught something quickly.
Mm-hmm.
It could be just something small. We should be looking around in our personal lives and in our like virtual lives. Look for positive things and try to promote that, because you're going to get the better out of people when you qualify that positive stuff, the little stuff. Well, thank you for doing that little thing that nobody else probably noticed, but I noticed, and I just wanted to tell you thank you, because that's going to carry on.
Mm-hmm.
That positivity also spreads just like negativity can. So next we have overgeneralization, and this is making broad interpretations from a single or few events, and so we overgeneralize things. And something might be like, something might be going on in your life and you got to do this thing, but you make a mistake. And so you're like, I always make mistakes. It happens to me all the time. Or just because, maybe an even better example might be that, because one person from the opposite party that you affiliate with, they might be a real jerk and a real evil person, and they do illegal things. but does that mean the entire party falls in line with that? Don't get me wrong, politicians are, in my opinion, most of them are crooked, but I'm looking for the silver lining though. And the thing is, if I'm looking for it, I'm gonna find more positivity in life in general. And so we get caught in a rut when we definitively think that we already can overgeneralize everybody. And maybe it's something cultural or racial, because I've had a problem with one person who happened to be Chinese. Now I think that all Chinese are terrible people. And that's not the case. It's not the case with anybody,
I tend to think that all Chinese people or all, never mind. I'm not going to say that. Go ahead. I was going to make a Jackie Chan reference.
Okay.
And I think you knew where I would go with that, but
I was going to say, I think it's safe to say that, for a lot of people, they think all Chinese people are like good at karate, that they're masters of the martial arts.
Yeah.
And it's not the case. It's just not the case. And I think overgeneralizing, especially with cultural differences and racial differences, is probably some of the most common overgeneralizing aspects of our lives, just in general as people. And it comes from, it has an evolutionary origin. We were careful of the others because those others might try to come in on our camp. They might try to infiltrate our tribe and kill us and take our resources. And so that evolutionary basis was there for a reason. But as we evolve and we come into more of a conscious awareness of us being one race as humans, we're trying to unwind a lot of that. But once again, these thoughts that come into our minds are in large part automatic. And so we can be cognizant of them now, and we have the awareness to be able to counterthink them in a sense. So mind reading, this is a big one here now. Interpreting the thoughts and beliefs of others without adequate evidence. Okay. So this is something that's been hitting a lot lately with, let me give you an example. Social media, once again, Matthew McConaughey now has made it public that he doesn't want to vaccinate his kids, his school age kids. Okay. So what do you think people are saying? Well, you don't care about kids. You don't care about other people's kids.
Okay.
You don't care about your kids. You don't care about anything because you're not willing to vaccinate them. Okay. So they're reading his mind based off of their own bias, their own confirmation bias, that if you don't vaccinate, or if you don't vaccinate your children, you don't care about other people getting COVID, you want them to die, that you must want them to die. And it's one of the most annoying things that I see out there with all this COVID. It's okay to have fear. It's natural. It's okay to have doubts. That's natural. It's okay to have differing opinions. That's natural. But it's a cognitive distortion, and it's inaccurate to think you already know what that person is thinking because they don't do this or they do this, right?
Yeah.
It's a mistake. It doesn't just go against like my belief system. It's just an inaccurate and inadequate way to think about things because you have no clue what that person's actually thinking. You say you do and you think you do, but you really don't. So if you want to follow the science, follow that science.
And then on social media, it makes it even worse too, because if you have enough people who are saying Matthew McConaughey doesn't care about other people's kids and other people's families because he won't vaccinate his kids, and now that's like out on social media, and it probably makes it far enough to where people are saying that Matthew McConaughey has stated that he doesn't care about other people's kids. You know what I'm saying? Like that's how it travels on social media. So somebody's one person's thoughts that they put out on social media to other people can become what people think of someone and what they think of other people's beliefs.
Yeah. It spreads like wildfire. And just because I read it on social media, now it's true. Once again, that confirmation bias that we're constantly chasing. So lastly, we have emotional reasoning. This goes hand in hand with this too. And I use that vaccination Matthew McConaughey example because it's just so pervasive right now. Everywhere you go, the whole vaccination COVID talk. But emotional reasoning is another big one we can use with kind of the same example. The assumption that emotions reflect the way things really are. So in other words, just because I feel a certain way, then it must be true. So I feel like you don't care about people. I feel like, the world's going to end. I feel like nobody likes me. I feel like whatever. So therefore it must be true, because our emotions are a powerful force within us, and they have a lot of evolutionary explanation backing them up. They have a lot of benefit to us today. But as anyone knows, if you've done any thought about emotions whatsoever, you know that emotions can also be like, they can cause you to be a train wreck. They can cause you a lot of trouble in life. Overwhelming emotions is something we deal with a lot in mental health. And if you emotionally reason everything about you, if you only go on your emotions and you don't have that balance between emotion and intellect, then life's pretty hard for you, because emotions are a roller coaster.
Yep.
And especially nowadays, if you follow anything that's going on in life, you're going to be an emotional wreck.
Mm-hmm.
So that is my rundown of our cognitive distortions for today. And the definitive thinking that you and I were discussing, and that we discuss here a little bit today, is based on a lot of these unhelpful thinking styles that I just showed. Because we emotionally reason things, it causes us to, well, since I feel it so strongly, in my mind, it must be true. And the only real way to undo that is to first notice it, think about it, and then try to reason, try to use common sense and a balance in your life between emotions and intellect. And we can do this with all of these cognitive distortions. We notice them, then we can counterthink them and try to do better.
Right. And not always using that first thought, like we talked about in the last episode too, choosing the thought that you want to use. Just because you automatically think something doesn't necessarily mean that has to be the thought that you lead with. You can choose what one you want to use.
That's right. We have the ability to choose one thought over another.
Right.
So having said that, I'm having thoughts that it's about time for us to close this down.
Uh-huh.
We have an appointment at the gym today.
Do.
It happens to be leg day. And just because I feel like it's probably going to kill me, like I'm going to die, that doesn't actually make it so. I'm using emotional reasoning there, but I'm counter thinking that because I noticed that cognitive distortion that I used.
Yeah, but I don't know if it's accurate. We might die.
we might, but we don't have any evidence to support it yet.
Yeah.
I mean,
if we don't put any more podcasts out and nobody hears from us anymore, that's what happened.
We died. Yeah.
We died.
All right, man. Good stuff.
Yep.
See you in a bit.
Yep.